Now, just a little bit of data. We did a survey in 1996 while I was at the MGH, and we sent around 100 surveys. And here's what we did. We took an interpretation of a coagulation series of tests, sent it back to the doctor and said, if you remember this case, will you answer these 4 questions? First question, when we gave you the interpretation, did you figure out what the patient had sooner? Ooh, 60% said yes. How about that? How about this one? Did you do fewer lab tests because we gave you an interpretation? Almost 3/4. Now here's the stunner. We asked them if they would have made a mistake if we didn't give them the interpretation. About 3/4. About 3/4. I really respect my colleagues. I mean, I think these are phenomenal docs. This just shows you it's impossible to know it. You know, there's this first sense of, you should know that. I mean, if I know it, shouldn't you know it? If the PTT is long, I know what to do. You should know that. The fact is you can't know everything about everything. And laboratory medicine has just gotten too big. And this is what they said. 98% said, keep doing this, right? There was a real sense of reality. There are no 98% approval ratings for everything. If you ask America right now, you wouldn't get 98% of the people to say we're in a recession. There are all these people who just don't deny it, right? So this was a huge response. We did a subsequent survey done electronically, so we kept going until we got 100. But we asked more questions. We still got the answer. They got the answer faster. It stopped them from making a mistake. It shortened the time to diagnosis, and it reduced lab testing. But look at these other things. They said we didn't do a procedure because we got the interp. Some people didn't come to the hospital. Some people got fewer meds. Some people didn't get transfused. And look at this. Increased or decreased specialist consultation. Now, this is a little bit different here. Now we're talking about the fact that we told you when you gave the PTT that was 88, we told you what the answer was. Now, what's the impact on hematology, internal medicine / hematology? Are they going to get mad at us? Well, you know what? At first they did. They really did. They said, what are you guys doing? You're generating this paragraph. You know what happened? I didn't get the consult for the prolonged PTT, and that's the way I make my living. So we pushed forward. We developed the concept, and you know what happened after a few months? They realized something else. All those patients who had bleeding and clotting disorders who never got a diagnosis, now they got one because we did the interpretation, and they got a referral to the hematologist. Now the hematologist had a new patient that they never would have had. They just would have bled for the next 30 years with no diagnosis. So what this happened to change is that we right-sized consultations. We did some reduction, and we did some of an increase. So it made a difference. So with this kind of data, which, and again, for 15 years everybody has known it's an issue, how come we're not systematically providing patient-specific, expert-driven interpretations in the clinical laboratory? So we started in coagulation. In the first week, we did 9 cases. 9 cases is all we interpreted. So people have said, well, you know, we don't have enough cases to interpret. So therefore, it's not worth it to give anything more than just the answer. The fact is, if you never implement the service, nobody ever knows the value. And what happened over time is that went to 30 cases a day. 30 cases a day from 9 a week. So huge. So the general internists are saying, would you please make this service available and do the interps in clinical lab medicine just like they do in anatomic path and in radiology? Would you all get along? Because what we're trying to do is take care of our patients. And the pathologists are saying, well, I don't know, coag, and maybe they'll get mad at me, and I'm not sure how much I'm going to get paid for it. Don't you have that canned comment, and isn't that good enough? And after all, if you're in academic medicine, if you don't make associate professor, you get fired anyhow. So you better start publishing your papers. Ooh, there's a real reality test. There's a survey done by the CAP every 2 years. This looks at how much the pathologists are doing in clinical path, how many hours a week. They're working about 50 hours a week. They're spending about 10 hours in clinical pathology, and really only about 2 hours out of those 50 dealing with doctors on consults. Ooh, boy. So they're really not spending much time in the clinical laboratory talking about patients. In fact, most of this is signing out hematopathology, which is considered clinical pathology in a lot of circles. So now, as I told you at the beginning, people are realizing that this is a source of medical error. I just got something in my email earlier, an hour earlier. David Blumenthal, who's been at the Mass General in Boston, is now got appointed by Obama as to be one of these big honchos in HHS with regard to patient safety. And they said, would you send him an email and tell him that the laboratory needs some attention with regard to patient safety? You bet I will, sometime before the end of this day. So medical error now in the clinical laboratory related to lab tests, didn't pick the right test, did something wrong with them, is now a big source of awareness. And molecular diagnostics has helped with it. So that brings us to all of us in the room. How's the lab supervisor contribute to the solution of this clinical problem now? So this is the ideal circumstance, right? I have to say, I've been the beneficiary of living in this ideal world for a long time. See, here's me, and I know a little bit about the performance of the thrombin time in coagulation. I kind of know that, you know, plasma and then thromboquick, which is thrombin. But you know what? I don't know the technical details. I couldn't do the test. That's okay. Fortunately, we are all links in a chain. And so somebody in the clinical lab knows the details to get that exact test right. And he or she also knows that the thrombin time is associated with bleeding and it's connected to the reptilase time. So we have an overlap. Isn't that great? Right? So we know something about each other's world, but we expand this circle a lot. What really happens in our clinical laboratory? Where's the pathologist? Right there in that little circle. The fact is they really don't have this special circle where they know what to do with the thrombin time of 88. Sorry. They know a little bit about the laboratory because they get ready for inspection. They get some amount of money for being the lab director, right? But the fact is that you probably know far more than they do, and the fact is that your average pathologist doesn't have a whole lot of knowledge about what to do with that thrombin time. So somebody has to be the patient advocate. Somebody who knows what you know today has to say, I know what to do with that PTT that's 88 seconds, right? And that may be you. And so I see this as something easy on the algorithms end. Now, I admit the politics are complex at every institution, some more than others. But for people to say, look, why don't we use algorithms instead of making them pick from a big list, that's certainly one where a lab supervisor can say, I just heard about algorithms and reflex testing. Shouldn't we do that? And I think it's an institutional solution where technologists, pathologists, outside experts have to say, maybe we ought to come up with a plan to interpret the test results. And is this the opportunity that we all have been waiting for at the whole team perspective? So we got a pathologist, we got the lab supervisor, we got medical technologists and medical technicians.